All right. So I'm here with Eleni, and I will have you introduce all your credentials, background, and everything. So here you go.
All right. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Eleni Economides, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, an ASEC certified sex therapist, and a certified life coach. And I work mostly or a lot with women um, that have concerns around relationships, intimacy, and sex, and especially the ones that identify as the lower libido partner in their intimate relationship. Have a
Hmm.
special place in my heart.
Mm,
Uh, and I also have a therapy practice where I see couples and individuals for relationship and sex therapy.
nice. Awesome. I'm really excited to talk with you, and thank you for taking the time to do this. I think it's still difficult to, difficult topic to talk about. There's still a lot of like shame and stigma and so forth. So I'm really big on opening up spaces to help normalize it a
Mhm.
bit. So thank you for doing this. Um, so yeah, I guess one of my first questions is, like you said, that it tends to be more with the female having the lower, they'd identify with having lower libido. Um, what are some of the common, like, actual reasons as to why that is? And that might be too broad of a question, but I wasn't sure if like what you see the most as to like what's getting in the way with that with most women.
I think it's important to identify what low libido is first before we go into
Yeah, that's a
figuring
great
out
idea.
what it is and like why it's happening. Because most people, well, okay. So low libido is two things. The way I define low libido, okay, the way I work with it, what I help women do. The first component has to do with your level of horniness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So libido is decreased horniness, decreased sort of spontaneous sensation that you feel horny and you want to sort of like you have an itch and you want to scratch it.
Yep.
And then low libido is also that's where I mostly help women with, right? Low willingness to
Mm,
get off.
yes. Like
Okay.
resistance.
Yeah, because the big part of this comes from the misconception that the horniness needs to be there
Right.
before you start having sex. Like the
Yep.
horniness it's necessary. It's
Right.
a prerequisite, right? So people think that since I'm not horny, I don't want to have sex.
Right.
So that's part of what low willingness looks like, but it also looks like I'm mad at you and I don't want to kind of, you know, get into this. I'm sort of angry with my partner. I'm sad. Like it looks like being distracted by other things or absorbed into other emotions and not wanting to spend the time and the focus that getting turned on would require. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Totally. Yeah, because there's needs to be a decent willingness, especially if you don't have the spontaneous horniness to drive the behavior, then I guess I look at it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like a lot, yeah, this letting go and allowing, like I'm gonna allow this, soft touch and I'm to fully receive it and let my body respond to it without my brain being like, but there's dishes in the sink, and what about that thing from Tuesday? And right, like all that fun
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
All the mental chatter that's sometimes related to sex. Oh gosh, he's going to want to sex and I don't have time and it's going to take too long and the kids are still up and or other things like the
Yeah.
dishes, work, and not being able to shut it down.
Yeah. So, so I'm guessing, okay, so like, here's a question. So do you find that then by working with a lot of that mental chatter and then allowing, do women then start to just naturally get that spontaneous horniness where they're like turned on? Does that change, or does that kind of stay the same, or is it different for everybody?
It is different for everybody. but the first piece, is appropriate sex education, sort of like
Mm.
correcting misconceptions and helping women understand how female sexuality and sexual desire works, right? Because nobody teaches us
Right.
those things, right? The sex education we get at school is very minimal and incorrect a lot of times.
Yeah.
Most people get their sex education from porn
Right.
or peers. So
Yeah.
it's very, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions that lead to so much anxiety.
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about what some of those common misconceptions are that you're finding, that you're re-educating people on.
Mhm. Do you want to finish the first question and then we
With
can
the
go back?
libido, yeah, like
Yeah,
why?
just
I noticed that. I was like, well, I'm kind of going all over the place. Um, I feel like they probably kind of go together,
that's right.
those two questions.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
They do
yeah.
go together. So we start with kind of understanding why they think they have low libido, right?
Hmm.
Because if the idea is that the horniness needs to be there, so that I don't have it. A lot of women just don't know that there is two kinds of sexual desire, spontaneous and responsive.
Hmm.
Spontaneous is horniness, right? Easy access, you don't need to do anything. Responsive is you start getting into it and then your desire kicks in.
Yeah.
So that's why it's called responsive, which is if you have the willingness to do that, then, might not work all the time, but you're definitely going to get 50% more sex.
Totally. Yeah.
Desire for it, right? If you're open to letting that happen.
Yeah.
But so that's the big part. Like we're talking about what are the thoughts and beliefs that are holding you back
Hmm.
being sexual. Some of it has to do with assumptions we have around sex and what's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with um, our partner and what they want from us. This kind of all men want is sex is very, uh, you know, kind of women build a wall around it that they kind of um, think that all men want is sex and they kind of forget the part that they want it. They want it with you, your
Right.
partner, you. They don't want it just to want it. I'm sure some people, I don't want to overgeneralize, but so then we get into all of what you're saying, sort of like this belief system around what is sex for, why
Yeah.
we have it for. Because if you feel like you're having it just for your partner, it's going to be very difficult
Right.
to, and you don't know how to receive and how to allow yourself to kind of receive pleasure and enjoy. We're very good at it as women being caretakers, even when it comes to sex.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just had the thought, I'm not sure exactly what you said that made me think of it, but it made me think of how I think we're socialized to like use sex as like a punishment with men, or saying like if that's all they want and if I'm not getting what I want from you, then why would I give you sex? Why would I like allow this?
Mhm.
And it seems to turn into like a power struggle that I noticed happening with a lot of people.
That's what it is. And
Okay.
it feels to men like punishment.
Yes, yes, yes.
uh, because, and it starts with our socialization, right? Who, being the quieter partner, being the one that has less say, and being more of the caretaker and sort of pretty much people pleaser, right? We're raised to be people pleasers. So even though we are the ones that give our power away in the relationship,
Hmm.
it feels we don't have a choice. So the only place where we do have a choice
The
is,
sex. Yeah.
right? And this is, so for some women, it's a pretty conscious process. They know they're doing it, they know it's happening.
Yeah.
And for a lot of women, it's just an unconscious thing where they sort of do control sex, but they don't recognize it. They don't recognize it when their partner is telling them that it's all on your terms.
Right. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
feel quite the opposite, that they feel they're controlled by their higher desire partner, that whenever they want, they have to sort of give it.
Right.
So yes, we talk a lot about that, right? That's part of the unwiring that we
Yeah.
process. Like, what is the wiring? What are the beliefs? What's the sort of baseline where you're starting? That's the relationship you have with sex, and then we start to unpack this and pretty much start to consciously choose what you want to believe and what you want to create, because we don't know we can do that. We don't know that we can choose what to think. We think we have to think what we've been already thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely had to do a lot of unwiring, and I'm sure there's still a lot, I'm still doing a lot of unwiring. But yeah, another thought I had, so with the power struggles, um, there's also this like shame component around the desire and wanting it, I feel like a lot. So I was curious if you run into that, like I shouldn't want this, or what does it say about me if I do, and things like that.
Mhm. Uh, yes, we are caught up in that conundrum of don't be too sexual because then you are immoral or you're slapped, you're sort of, too horny, you're not, and uh, be sexual as possible you possibly can, because that's what your partner wants from you. That's how you to keep him. And
Right.
so there's this confusion between how do you turn it on and how do you turn it off? Like, how do you go from not being too sexy and sexual to being very sexy and sexual? And that carries the side that you were describing, carries a lot of shame. Like, if I
Yes.
want it too much, if something, I'm trying to shut it down because you were told, or the message was passed that sex is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, you might bring on to yourself unwanted attention, and you have to kind of like manage your sexuality and keep it low. And of course, if there is an added religious component, that
Yes.
becomes
Yeah.
even stronger. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's, like you're kind of saying, there seems to be this like fine line, right? And a lot of women are trying to figure out what is that line? What does it look like? And it's a bit overwhelming.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so I was just looking at the comment here, yeah, around the
Mhm.
religious background.
Yeah,
Um,
that adds a layer, but the shame is almost there, like for most women. Some women have worked through it, or they've had more sort of quote unquote modern
mhm.
parenting, and they
Yeah.
are better at understanding that sex is a way to show love, it's a way to receive and give pleasure, and it's a positive thing.
Hmm.
But for most of us, being raised in a patriarchal society, we receive the message that sex is dangerous, it's dirty, it's immoral, your character and reputation is on the line if you kind
Hmm.
of, you know, if you're okay with it.
Right. Yeah.
Forget liking it, but if you're sort of accepting of sex, perhaps, you're not to be trusted with, you're with one partner. Wow, maybe you'll cheat. Like, somehow you won't be able to control yourself if you like sex.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm guessing you probably do a decent amount of like embodiment work with women to get them like connected to their bodies, or like I'm curious how you help them learn to enjoy their pleasure instead of feeling like shame about their pleasure
Mhm.
or an obligation, like how do you help them like us connect in that way?
Well, the biggest component is actually loosening up those kind of beliefs.
The belief systems, yeah.
Being able to actually become aware of it, because most of us it's just don't know that it's there.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't know that it's optional. We don't know that we have the power to choose to keep what serves us and release the rest, right?
Yeah.
So that's the biggest component.
Okay.
And for some women, that's the majority of what they need. And
Nice.
there's other women where, they haven't had, they're so disconnected with themselves, so they haven't masturbated because they thought that that's a bad thing to do. They haven't experienced an orgasm and they don't know how to bring themselves to experience pleasure, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a bit of a sort of comes later. The
Okay.
first really doing this, and then if this doesn't um, allow them to start trying new things and be more vocal in their relationship and be more gentle with themselves and change that relationship with sex, then we go into more of a kind of, ways to uh, how do you masturbate? How do
Yeah.
you look at yourself in the mirror, look at your vulva and touch it in certain ways? And how do you use sex toys to amplify pleasure and learn what you like? Because if you don't know what feels good to you, it will be very hard to describe it to a partner or
Right.
to expect that they should know,
Yes.
because everybody is different. But to also have the courage and develop the ability to ask for what you want, because
Yeah.
that comes with, you know, honoring yourself and your own pleasure equally.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. That makes sense because
others.
if you change your belief system around it, then now when you go to communicate, you're gonna deal with less of the shame and
That's right.
judgment, right, that gets in the way. Whereas, yeah, if you still have a fixated negative belief system, then you're gonna get really caught up in your throat trying to
Mhm.
communicate. Or like you said, even allow yourself to even know, what you want and what you
Yeah.
like. Yeah. Yeah. Um, do you run into working with couples or women when there's some sort of like when there's like a medical issue, preventing them? Um,
Yeah, that's more like the sex therapy part. Like
okay.
if there is what you would call a sexual dysfunction. I
Okay.
mean, uh, hypoactive sexual desire disorder, which is low libido, is also part of, considered potentially sexual dysfunction.
Okay.
But I don't call it that because it's so common. It's more common than not. So I would not call it a disorder, and most of it is um, produced by sexual anxiety, sexual shame,
Yeah.
and not knowing how to handle the dynamic of desire discrepancy. That's a natural dynamic between two partners. But if there is a medical component, or a lot of times low libido is triggered by the use of medication, especially antidepressants and the anxiety,
Yes, yes.
and of course diabetes, cancer. So there's
Yeah.
certain medical diagnoses that would definitely impact once
Hmm.
a experience desire and pleasure. And then we work around that with the partner there and kind of learning to develop a new sexual style
Okay.
that would work for this couple and for this woman, because uh, that's also something that we don't know. We can choose the sex we want to have. It doesn't always have to be intercourse.
Yes, yes.
It doesn't always have to be. I mean, that's a big one of the
Yeah.
myths that you
Yeah,
you were
totally.
talking about, right? It always has to like transition to intercourse. That's the right way to have sex, like
Right.
the best way to have sex. And people sometimes just don't have time. I mean, intercourse takes a lot. Could
It does. It really
if you are
does.
going to, have an experience where both people can enjoy.
Yes.
Sometimes women end up having intercourse just to get it over with, and for him, and then they
Yes.
just don't get anything from it, and they develop resentment.
Hmm.
But sometimes oral sex and just touching each other and bringing each other to orgasm if you want to, with hands and mouth, tongue, vibrator. It's sex. It's sex.
Yeah.
It doesn't intercourse.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful for couples or partners that have a medical condition and they can't use their body the way they used to.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of led into my next question around, yeah, broadening that definition of
mm,
sex and
that's right.
intimacy. Um,
Broadening the definition and transition from goal-oriented
yes.
sex to pleasure-oriented sex. The goal is pleasure
Yes.
and connection and whatever you want to feel when you have sex. You want to feel empowered, you want to feel in control, you want to give up control, you want to feel what there's so many reasons why one might want to have sex, not just because they want to have an orgasm. An orgasm is great, it feels great, it's a great release. Uh, but it's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
And that's more like what goal-oriented sex looks like, right? The goal is the orgasm. And when we get to it, that's the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that creates a lot of performance anxiety, a lot of, people get caught up in how long it's taking. Am I taking too long? Is this going to last long enough for me to climax? And, and it takes away from the desire
Yes.
for it.
Yes. Yeah.
Because once you start associating sex with anxiety and pressure and fear and all of that, your brain learns that you gotta avoid that thing because no good for you. You
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that question of what do you want to feel when having sex? I really like that. And like you're saying, well, and because I always talk about not focusing on the outcomes, not focusing on that finish line, whether that's an orgasm or really whatever, whatever it is. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, whether it's like that control, the surrender, the pleasure, the connection, um, because yeah, you can have that in so many
Mhm.
ways, even just like caressing someone, lightly touching them, gazing into their eyes, there's so much. Um, and I feel like that really helps enhance your experience, whether you have
Mhm.
like a medical condition getting in the way or not.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, are there like specific resources that you tend to point people to if they're um to like help them, if they're like, well, I don't really know anything more than oral sex or penetration, like um yeah, like do you tend to point people in some sort of direction on how to
Mm.
learn about
There
that?
are there are there are places where you can some great sites. OMG, yes, is one. I use that a lot, and it's such an awesome app now that they've developed. It's actually interactive,
Oh,
where
cool.
you can sort of you have the vulva of a woman, and it's sort of you can touch it in certain places if you have a touch screen, and she tells you what it feels like.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
But it is for women, right? It is
Yeah.
educational. It is sort of how to masturbate, ways to masturbate, and you can use it with a partner too. And it's resources for couples and positions and ways to incorporate if you want sort of more kinky stuff, more maybe rope, maybe other ways to amplify pleasure. And so OMG, yes, is one.
Hmm.
Beducated, like bed educated
Yeah, yeah,
is another
yeah.
one, which is different than OMG Yes, in that OMG Yes is geared toward women more and
Okay.
sort of educating. And there's all these interviews and stories of women and how to reach climax if you're not able to, and all of that. And educated is more of like courses that you can do by yourself if you want to get better at this and if you want to get better at that, or with your partner. And I suggest to women a lot to um, take a look at ethical and feminist porn.
Mm,
It's different than the porn you'll find on Xtube or Pornhub or whatever you find it, right? So feminist slash ethical porn is porn made by women
right,
for
yeah.
women. The director is one of the very kind of well-known ones is Erica Lust,
Mm,
and she has directed and created a lot of porn that it is made by people that love to make porn. There,
mhm,
nobody's being coerced, nobody's being taken advantage of, because that's a big hang up
yeah.
we have when when we're watching porn. We're thinking that, we worry, is this woman wanting to be doing this? Is she doing this? Is somebody coerced her? Is this legal?
Yeah.
So that's certainly something you don't have to worry with ethical and feminist porn, right? Maybe there is a, a small sort of fee or membership. I don't know. Some of the porn you have to go buy or
Mhm.
rent. It's not free for that reason, right? Because these people are getting paid very well and they feel great. They choose the positions, they choose the porn they want to create.
Oh,
They're
nice.
not directed by the director. So it sort of removes that layer of anxiety that what I'm watching now might not be right.
Right.
And uh, and it's very, all bodies. You see people that are big, small, disabled people, threesomes, orgies. It's just all sorts of kind
Yeah,
of porn, not your
that's great.
typical
Yeah,
heterosexual kind of, um,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
kind.
Yeah, I think that sounds really great. It makes it more real and less of a, because the porn industry is is entertainment, right? Like it's an
Mhm,
entertainment
mhm.
industry, so it's going to be treated as such. And so it's great to have a resource that, like, okay, this is going to actually help enhance your sex life, and this
Mhm.
isn't just to entertain you and help you get off and distract from, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it does that, at least you get to see some people that have your body. It's not
Right.
all women don't look the same. They're
Yeah.
not just, shaved, thin, with great abs, and I don't know,
Yeah.
normal
Yeah.
women, regular women that just they've had kids, they've had babies, they have bellies, they have stretch marks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm guessing. So, yeah, I'm guessing you probably talk a lot about that with women, like, they're,
Body image.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah,
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 yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's part of, it's part of um, our culture, right? Social media and just it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, our brain has the need to compare.
yeah,
That's how part of how it does things to protect us.
yeah, yeah,
It's sort of comparing and making sure that we fit with the group.
yeah,
Um, it's part of our survival mechanism. And when we perceive that something is not the same or we don't look like we should, then it creates all this drama about it. And all of a sudden you have a problem when there is no problem.
right,
There is no problem with having this number on the scale versus that number on the
yeah,
scale. But obviously, thinness is glorified
right,
in our
yeah,
culture, and um, that's another layer that we want to look at, and what's like to embrace your body and accept it, and sort of like be grateful for it and all it has to offer, and how it's carrying your spirit to the in this world, right? And it does it with such a grace. It doesn't ask for anything from you. It just does it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge shift, and I feel like that's probably a life a lifelong shift too of like caring for your body, loving your body, yeah, recognizing how it's working for you instead of how it's working against you, you know. So again, it's like that negativity bias too. Like we don't
Mhm,
thank our bodies at the end of the day for everything that it did do, right?
mhm,
Instead, it's like, oh, my body didn't do this or it malfunctioned
yeah,
this way. And then,
mhm,
right? And then that
mhm,
develops this relationship with your body that is kind of punitive and um negative. And have found that that gets in the way of connecting with our own pleasure, right? Because now you
yeah,
have this punitive relationship with your body and not a pleasurable one. Yeah,
yeah, it's a big one. That's a big one, right?
yeah,
Yeah, learning to love your body and I mean, yourself.
yeah, yeah,
Who you are. Yeah. And good sex is ultimately about sex love, self love, right?
yes,
Self good sex and enjoying sex and being able to fully be into it is about loving yourself and sort of accepting pleasure and letting someone else see you
yes,
and not hiding behind, the facade that, it needs to look a certain way. And if you don't, this fear of rejection, sort of how do you get past fear of rejection, fear of judgment, and just be and and be present.
yeah. Um, I just had a thought. How do you like define or talk about sexual chemistry between people?
Hmm. Um, well, can you say more what you mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
what people mean is sexual chemistry, it really varies.
Right, yeah. Like, well, I guess too, when you were talking about self-love and so forth, like, um, I was curious of, you know, when people get to a place of like recognize, like they're like, okay, this feels like it fits, and we're really enjoying ourselves this way, and like, yeah, like two people kind of fitting together. You're still learning about each other, versus, some people that they're just like, it's just not meshing, and we're trying these different things, but there seems to be something missing. So I guess that's kind of the two scenarios that
Mhm.
came to my head when that question came up.
Mm. Well, if there was chemistry at some point,
Yes, yes.
if there wasn't chemistry, probably the relationship would not
Get too far.
last, would not
Yeah.
continue. If it's lasted this long and there is no chemistry now, we
Mm,
go back to what allowed you to have chemistry at some point. What
right.
was it that made it so the chemistry was there?
Yeah.
And are we talking about sexual attraction, feeling attracted to your partner? Are we talking about um, um, being able to enjoy pleasure and climax and now it's not happening? Like, what does it mean to not have um, this compatibility?
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it is that, you've grown, you've become a different person, you've grown enough uh, in the old version of you, and now you're transitioning to a new version of you. And maybe your partner hasn't followed along.
Yeah.
Like, how do you communicate the new desires, the new wishes you have? Because sometimes we just want it to be there. We
Right.
want it to be great, and we don't want to have to do anything about it to make it great.
Hmm. Yep.
We want it to, right? We don't want to have to try.
Yeah.
And when it's not already there or it has changed, we make that a problem.
Hmm.
We make it mean that we're not compatible. Maybe we'll be better off with another partner. Um, there is no chemistry. It means it's not that easy anymore.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, so I have to work harder to get there. and to think of, or oh, the other thing, when you're with someone in the beginning, all your thoughts are positive.
Right.
This person can do no freaking wrong. And
Right.
10 years down the road, you had enough experience with them and you've seen their dirty socks and dirty underwear on the floor, and you had to flush the toilet and you had to close the cabinets, and what your negative thoughts about them have increased
Yeah. Okay. That's a
quite a
good,
bit.
yeah.
Okay? Your sort of negative side of the partner, the view, is a lot more there, right? So it's impacting your attractiveness, it's impacting your desire for them, the fondness that you have, the admiration. And we want to sort of understand that, see what's changed up here for us toward our partner. Because
Hmm.
this person is much or less the same,
Yeah. Yeah.
just didn't care as much about the things that we care about now. And we didn't pay as much attention to them,
Yeah.
but now we do. So we want to kind of, again, pick and choose to keep what is serving us and see if we want to challenge some of those, that mental chatter that does get in the way of our love for our partner and the chemistry that we once felt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes it's just things have changed, and now you have to consider, is the chemistry more important, that you want to pursue it in outside of this relationship with someone else,
Hmm.
or you got to weigh the pros and cons of advantages and disadvantages. But if that's the case, if the case of a chemistry or less of the partner needs to be clued in.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, this is not something that you want to try and figure out on your own, which is terrifying. If you understand what I just said, it's like you got to tell your partner you're not attracted to them. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's
chances
hard.
are they know.
They should know, but they might be
Yeah,
denying it. If,
that's
if they
right.
say they don't, usually it's like, well, part of them does, but they're too afraid to admit
That's
that.
right. It's terrifying, right? Because it carries so much meaning,
Yeah.
so much like the potential for um, negative things, so like something bad happening or losing, ending the relationship. But yeah, so a lot of these things are important to include the partner and sort of make him or her part of these discussions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just, I think, even as we like shed these beliefs or shift these beliefs around sex and intimacy and what all that means, um, I always notice there's like this fear of loss, like if I'm honest, if I say what I'm actually thinking or how I'm really feeling, it can feel really terrifying of what if that like, affects things in a negative way. And I
Mhm.
think then, people don't say things, but then also the problem then that kind of piles up, right? The not saying of all the things, and then it turns into a big problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you just said is the most, it's such an important thing that most of us don't understand, right? That in an attempt to avoid discomfort here, we create discomfort there.
Yeah.
We think we are saving ourselves the discomfort by avoiding this, but we're creating it here. And we're exchanging stuckness when we create it here with potential growth and move forward. Because if you do tell your partner, then they have a choice. They know, then you can start working on something.
Yeah.
If you don't tell your partner, then you're the one only in discomfort.
Yep. Right.
And it chips away from the relationship. It does not protect it.
Right.
Like the same danger exists here, that the relationship is going to be corroded by the lack of honesty
Yes.
rather than grow to the next level, or maybe not grow, and then you have to make a choice, right? If
Right.
your partner is refusing to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then,
It's a hard one. I tell people, you know, I try to encourage people by saying, well, ideally, you would want your partner to be able to handle your honest, thoughts and
Mhm.
feelings and so forth, so that you can grow together. So I usually try and frame it that way to help bring that fear down, because that helps to, like that's the kind of partner you're going to want to be with, because if you want to grow with someone for years and years or decades and decades, then you have to be able to handle those difficult conversations.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
to also be understanding and sort of compassionate of the fact that, like, we have our human brain is wired to want to stay safe. It's
Yes.
wired to want to sort of, you know, safety is the most important thing. And safety means avoid discomfort or pain, seek pleasure or comfort, and preserve energy, minimize effort. That's the motivational triad, and our brain functions under that, like survival brain.
Yeah.
Now we have the other brain that coaching engages. Coaching engages your progressive brain, not your protective brain.
Mm,
Coaching engages your prefrontal cortex and the sort of ability that you have, we all have, to think ahead, think in the future, create possibilities, plan ahead, make decisions, right? That's not part of a survival brain.
no.
Survival brain says, stay in the cave, don't go out. There's a lion, it's going to eat you. Don't go against the norm. Just fit in, make sure you're part of the pack because if you're alone, you're going to die.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's strong,
So,
those feelings.
because
Yeah.
most of us live unconsciously by
Yes.
sort of being led by our survival brain.
Yep.
And we, unbeknownst to us, we play very small, right? So your partner is going to react with that survival brain.
Yep.
We got to give them a bit of grace here.
Yes.
Like they're going to react with their survival brain. That doesn't mean they're not willing to grow, even if they give a response you don't like in the beginning.
Yeah.
Some people are not going to be willing to grow. They're going to be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What survival brain you're talking about? I like my survival brain. It has kept me alive. And you go grow. And some other parts are going to be like, okay, let's see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I like that. Like allowing that space, knowing, okay, my partner's obviously probably not going to react very well, but I can allow. So it's how do I have my own safety, right, enough to
Yeah.
not react to their
The reaction.
reaction. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Because ideally, you want your partner to be able to handle a discussion like that. You want to be with someone who they're going to want to hear the truth,
yeah,
but to also have the awareness and the grace to allow them to have a freak out and let their brain go crazy for a second or two,
yeah,
and then see what
yeah,
the true reaction is to the new, right? What the sort of more grounded um,
yeah,
reaction to it and
yeah.
willingness to work through it. Yeah.
And so that kind of like makes me think back to what we're talking about, like the self-love, in the beginning, because if we have that self-love and grace to recognize when our own brain is in survival mode and we just overreacted to something, and to give us our time to like come and, recognize and move forward and not judge ourselves and shame ourselves for that. If we can do that in ourselves, it's a hell of a lot easier to do it for.
That's right. That's right. That's the goal.
Yeah.
And it's not a one done deal. Like it's
Right.
like what do you call it? This is a continuous process because you cannot get rid of your survival brain,
Yes.
right? And thankfully you can't because
Well, yeah,
otherwise,
we need it.
like really, we would be in trouble either way, right? But recognizing that just because you have the survival brain that's continuously telling you to stay safe, be safe, avoid danger, avoid taking any risks, don't risk failure, don't try anything new, doesn't mean that uh, uh, you constantly are going to have to kind of be kind to yourself about it, recognize it, so like and make a conscious choice. Survival brain. In the beginning, it sounds it's a little difficult to do, right? It takes practice.
Yep.
It takes practice, but it becomes a lot easier and a lot more intuitive
Yeah.
once you see it and understand it and witness it a few times, right? In the beginning, you're gonna make choices based on your survival brain, even though you know
Right.
that it's
Yeah.
sort of like the safe choice. And you're still
Right.
gonna do it, and that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with it.
Yes.
Um, but if that's not what you want or the result that creates in your life, then the sky's the limit.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point, reminder to have grace with ourselves, patience with ourselves, and to allow that process to unfold, and because I tell my clients, I'm like, yeah, you're still going to have these thoughts. You're still going to have these feelings. These things are going to come up, and you're probably still going to react to some degree. But the quicker you can catch it, the quicker you can understand it, the faster you end up moving through it. Um, and then that helps mitigate the damage done from from being in that survival um place. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so I'd like if you could talk about um your framework that you developed for women, a little bit, like tell us a little about that. And like I think you've got like a course and somebody kind of like tell us all about your
Course
wonderful
is still coming. I know you and I talk about when I'm gonna finish that course. The course is
That's what I
still
was like. Get you
uh,
on Zoom. I'm gonna market it, and now you're gonna have to finish working on it.
uh, the first draft is done. I still need. I want to do a second better group of women
Hmm.
uh, to kind of finish up the give it more life and move
Nice.
out of the just the frame, and then finish it up. But yes, the framework you're talking, I call it fierce womanhood.
I love it.
And it's a 12-week program, which I don't think per se it's enough. But it is a very strong start of this process of rewiring um, our relationship with our sexual selves, sex, and men,
Hmm.
or most because I'm seeing mostly women
Heterosexual women.
or
Yeah.
sexual relationships. The couples that I see, the majority are heterosexual. So, but the same rules apply to same-sex couples. There are some differences, though, right? Because I don't want to go into it, but there
Yeah.
are some differences.
It's fine.
It's gonna take a while. So, so what it is sort of this 3-month program where each week, so we start unpacking all of what we talked about, how our thoughts create our feelings, and we're recognizing the motivational triad. We understand how our brain works. We're building the ability to be in charge of our mental and emotional health,
Hmm.
be better able to get out of that fight or flight and be more conscious and aware and learn to develop self-confidence, because self-confidence, it's really our ability to believe in ourselves when we have no evidence that we can do something.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
faith, right? Which might
It's
not be always be the
but
best word.
it goes against our survival brain.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, confidence is believing in our ability to do something
Yeah.
because we've done it before. And even though in the beginning we were not doing it well, now we've done it enough times that we know we're going to do it well. Riding a bike, you have confidence that you can drink a glass of water, you have without spilling it, you have confidence that you can walk and you can run. Right?
Yeah.
So confidence comes from something that you've done many times and you've perfected, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Self-confidence, on the other,
Yeah.
is the ability to recognize that you have a capacity to grow into something and to have the courage to take a risk without having the evidence that it will work,
Yes.
and to make mistakes, learn from them, try again, do it better, and then have the confidence. And then you pretty much it's the process of developing evidence.
Yes, yes, yeah, that's what I tell people. I'm like, you create the evidence,
But
yeah.
it freaks people out because
Oh,
when
yeah,
you are self-confident and you have your own back when you make mistakes and you're not freaked out about what other people are gonna think and fear of rejection and failure, I mean, it's so much better than, like, why not do it that way? Like,
right,
why not believe in yourself? What's the advantage of not believing in yourself? If
right.
you can pick between believing and not believing, why pick not believing? Like, what is it? Yeah, it's the only thing that I can think of is survival brain says, but then you're gonna put yourself through discomfort. So that's not good for you. Remember, you just gotta feel comfortable all the time.
Right. Or, well, things aren't, and that's when, well, things aren't that bad, right?
Right.
So
That's right.
why put myself through that discomfort? And it's that fear of loss, right? Can we fuck it up more, right, by doing it? Which you don't, but before you make that leap, there's that fear, I'm gonna fuck it up. So therefore I'm gonna lose something and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna somehow go backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And and I struggled that with for years. It took a long time to recognize,
I
wait,
do
I
too.
can't go backwards. It's not possible to go backwards. Time doesn't work that way.
Yeah. 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 This fear of letting go something good for something better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary.
It's scary. And it's okay if one decides not to. But to come back to the
Sorry, we guys
I
went on
love
a
the
tangent.
tangents like here and there. I can't stop talking about stuff like I can talk
It's
like
so
a whole day.
exciting.
So the first component of the framework is I call it emotional intelligence
Hmm.
component, right? Developing that ability, that stepping into that self. The second component is relational intelligence, and it's pretty much improving your ability to think in your relationship, to see yourself as a separate person and your partner as a separate person, to not sort of like to be so reactive with each other, to be less emotionally fused,
Hmm.
to learn how to create connection and how to foster sort of intimacy and connection without fighting and arguing or disconnecting, and kind of, better communication. Once you start working on yourself and strengthening that side, then all of a sudden you have to communicate it, right?
Yeah.
So to learning how to communicate it, and you learning how to manage expectations, like a lot of us, like we all have manuals,
Yeah.
relationship manuals, like this is what my partner should say, this is what my partner should do if they love and care about me, and if they don't, that means they don't love and care about me and I feel hurt. Like
Yeah.
we right, and we believe those things, like we haven't even questioned it, like why do I believe that, where did I learn that he has to bring me flowers on my birthday and without me telling him,
Right.
because if I tell him, it doesn't come.
Mean anything. Yeah.
So stuff like that creates so much suffering in our relationship that it's optional,
Yeah.
right? But it's there, and we don't recognize that we have choices around it to like what are we gonna think and believe. And of course, boundaries, right? Learning how to establish boundaries and stay connected, because a lot of people, the way they establish boundaries is they sever connection.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
and that's the way, that's what I call a boundary. Like,
yeah.
just don't have any contact, or you try to control you and tell you
Right.
what you can and cannot do, because that's my boundary. That's not boundary.
Yeah.
Telling other people what they can and cannot do is not
That's
boundary. Boundary is about you, what
yourself.
you
Yeah. That's
or
control and manipulation and so forth when it
yes,
comes to the other. Yeah. Yeah.
yes. The third component, my favorite, perhaps. I don't know. I can't with them is sexual intelligence.
Love it.
Emotional intelligence, relational intelligence, and sexual intelligence. And it's all about what we talked in the first half of our talk, sort of understanding female sexuality and how it works, and female socialization, for sex education, the combination that creates this kind of like belief system around sex that does not serve us and impacts our libido and it impacts our ability to experience pleasure. And we sort of start to loosen that and talk about ways to develop a flexible sexual style, more pleasure-oriented sex rather than goal-oriented, and how to enhance pleasure and manage desire discrepancy, like one person wanting it more than the other without creating disconnect, because that's how a lot of people just manage it, sort of stay disconnected so the topic of sex is not on the table, so then we don't have to experience the discrepancy,
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
by being or by disconnecting and sort of living parallel lives kind of thing.
Yeah. I think it sounds amazing, and I can't wait for you to button up all the, things you gotta button up, because really I feel like every woman should, take this
Mhm.
course, and probably the sooner the better.
So
Because
just a clarification, this is not, the framework is not a course. Okay.
oh,
The
okay. Oh, it's
framework,
like a group.
this is individual coaching one-on-one,
Oh,
right?
okay. Oh, good to know. Okay.
So the 12 weeks is individual coaching one-on-one. We meet weekly.
Oh,
And
okay.
that is going to turn into a course, because
Oh,
in that I talk about the same topics over and over and
yes,
over
over.
and over
Yeah.
again, right? So that tells me a course would be beneficial, because I can put this kind of talking in the course, and then we can just focus on the coaching, because like
Yeah.
sort of like applying something, just learning about something and applying it is very different, right? We can learn about something and still struggle to apply it. So the coaching helps with the application.
Yeah.
Now the program does both teaching and application, learning.
Okay, cool.
The course is going to become the teaching part, and then the coaching will become the application and
Okay, great.
developing the ability. But
Awesome.
right now, people do have option to do that.
Okay,
Um,
cool. All right, so they can get in right away and start to really change this stuff, because yeah, I think all relationships would probably go a certain percentage better, right? Probably a decent
mhm.
percentage better, um, by just kind of having these foundational in education, understanding,
Mhm.
awareness, yeah, and honestly, that's what I've always seen my whole career. What tends to make people most distraught is their relationships,
Mhm.
and this
Yes.
is, you cover all the bases with that. So
Mhm.
it's beautiful. So I
Yes.
want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun. Awesome.
Yeah, it's just I loved, like you said, like we could probably go on 1,000 tangents all
Yes.
day
Yes.
and record each other, and we would have a field day. I don't know if everyone else would like that, but we would have a lot of fun. So, so before I stop the recording, and I'll put this like in text on YouTube and in my group, how should people find you if they're interested in working with you? Um,
Uh, of course, email, right? Eleni at newintimacy.com. But I'm also on Instagram as the libido coach.
oh, okay.
Both Instagram and Facebook, I'm the libido coach. And I post content, not very consistent with it. Sometimes I lose track of when the last time was, but I'm working on that, much like my course. And then I also have a small Facebook group that it's private, free. It's
Okay.
Confidence and Desire Reset.
Okay.
Um, That's the social media. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't think,
People are gonna.
Eleni Economides as LinkedIn. And am I forgetting something? My website is newintimacy.com. That's where you can find more information about this program. Cool. I do offer a free webinar.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's once a month. Sometimes it's twice, depending on how many people and how able I was to host and let people know I'm doing it. So it's why improving communication with your partner doesn't translate into the bedroom.
Okay.
Uh,
Awesome.
what to do instead. So it's coming up actually next Sunday,
Oh, okay, cool.
3 p.m. Eastern time. It happens. It's not a steady Sunday, but one Sunday of the month at 3 p.m. I offer this webinar.
Oh, that's
Uh,
awesome.
mhm.
Okay,
Would you
cool.
register for it? I can give you the link to be
Yeah,
a
shoot
big
me
fan.
the link and I'll post all your socials, your website and so
Mhm.
forth so people can get to it. So um
Okay.
I'm gonna say
That's
thank
all.
you and we stop the recording. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.